Hello there, Senators, and welcome back to Star Wars Democracy. Just got finished watching episode 7 of the Acolyte. I think it was called Choices or Choice. And we have a lot to discuss tonight. I have Travis here with me. Travis, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Awesome. I just finished the episode as well. I'm
Perfect.
on Eastern time, so it drops at 9. So I like literally just finished it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I am in the central time zone, so it drops for at 8 for me. And so
Oh,
I finished it just a little bit ago. And let's just jump into it. Um, I mean, you've watched the streams. You've been around for a while. I'm the type of person where I have to let it soak in a little bit. So honestly, these streams right after the episode drops are sometimes not a good idea for me. I will say it's not that it was bad. I liked the point of view that it gave us. I'm a fan of those types of these types of TV shows where it shows you different perspectives. I think it's actually called something in film. It's called something which you may know what it's called because you've done some editing and stuff, right? I think you mentioned before you've done some like video editing and stuff. Am I
hmm
making that up?
I got
Do
a
you know what it's?
studio light. Yeah, I have a studio
Oh,
light that is about 100 degrees behind my camera. So yeah.
oh, so you're familiar with this stuff, but this is called something, right? Someone in the chat, if post in the chat. But this type of video or TV editing it's called something when you get different perspectives, different points of view from different characters, and you get more different perspectives of different characters yields more understanding into the overall story. Anyway, someone can put it in the chat if they know what it's called, but
In storytelling, it's often called the Rashomon effect. I'm not sure if
that's what
that's
I'm
what
looking
you're.
for. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm looking for. So, I mean, do you have a definition for it, or do you just know what it's called? Like, did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, what they did in The Last Jedi with Luke and Ben Solo,
Sure.
showing one event from different perspectives and emphasizing how each character will focus on a different thing
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe
Sides of
influence, yeah, which
yeah,
I
sides of coins.
really, really appreciated in this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, I think I liked that part. Sides of coins says the Rashomon effect. So there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So I did like that. That he says too late. Way to go, Travis. Pat yourself on the back. Yeah, I liked that part of it. I liked that part of the episode. Um, but I got to tell you, I'm just gonna give some my overarching thoughts. I was a little bit underwhelmed with how everything ended up playing out. Did you get it? Do you feel the same way, or am I completely in left field on this?
Once again, it's easy to you build up expectation and anticipation for what's going to happen. Remember Bad
Hmm.
Batch? We were talking about like, oh man, Boba Fett's going to be there.
Yeah,
Ventress is
yeah,
going to show up in the finale, and none of that stuff happened.
yeah. You're right.
But to an extent, I think you're granted some leeway because there's um, having too many expectations and then just expecting what's offered, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if
Hmm.
someone takes bread, cheese, marinara sauce, and they go into the kitchen, you can assume they're going to make pizza. And if they come out with something other than pizza, you'll be like, "Oh, that's not what I was expecting." But for me, it was more so it wasn't as intricate and full of deception as I thought it would be. Like once we got the secrets of everything, but
Hmm.
I didn't see like I thought, and I think I've talked to you about this. I thought like with the reactor, I thought Kelnaka, since he was like working on machines, that he did something to the reactor which caused it to blow
Hmm.
up. We talked about how Kymir was on the poster overlooking the fire, so maybe
Hmm.
he had something to do with it. We talked about one of the Jedi maybe being evil, which I don't think they entirely said wasn't the case, but
Hmm.
it was definitely much more straightforward, I
Yeah.
will say. And I could
Yeah.
see someone being disappointed by that.
Yeah. That's kind of uh, yeah. That's straightforward is a good way to put it. It's like it. I was expecting more. I think you used the word deception. Like, I guess at this stage, I'm thinking, like, of all the murder mystery shows that I've watched, okay? And I feel like in most of them I feel like the show's done a pretty good job so far of, like, kind of throwing little twists in here or there, and I gotta say for the episode 7 of an 8-episode series, like, I don't think it left us with a very there was no twists in this episode that I caught at least. Not
Ah,
a
okay.
Do you
I
think there
think
was one?
there was a big one towards the end when, because it was one I didn't see coming at all. When there were minor things that were like context wise, like with
Mhm.
Torben and that whole thing of him being in that trance. There was this whole undercurrent of things that we didn't even know about. And I'm like, oh, that kind of adds up now. Why he was acting so weird in that episode.
Sure,
But
mhm,
the reveal of Master Soul choosing not to save May, that was the one that got me. I was like, "Oh my god," like, I audibly said, "Oh my god," when he did that,
yeah,
because we knew we were getting a different perspective, but that's not what I was expecting at all,
mhm,
especially with the ending of the last episode where Soul is like, "All right, May, we are going to talk, and you are going to listen." That
mhm,
conversation is gonna go a lot different now because it's gonna be more like, I didn't even want you to come back. Like, I'm like,
mhm.
oh my gosh. But yeah, so that was a for me, that was a pretty big twist.
Yeah, I see I see the perspective of it shedding some light, but it's just like
That was
mm,
evil. Like that was
it was
legit evil. That was the first because everyone's been saying he's evil, which I never thought was the case. But I knew, like, I thought maybe he did something that he really regrets. And that is like something terrible.
Did you find the way that the witches, uh, died to be uh, did you think it was gonna play out that way?
No, I didn't. I thought even in my initial thought, and I even thought up until a certain point that they would still do it, since the mother was saying no violence, I thought the mother, not sorry, there's two mothers. They're all mothers. That's confusing. Mother
Mhm,
Anastasia, I thought she was going to be the one that killed all the witches because she knew she didn't want violence, and
mhm.
the only way to end the conflict is for Osha to leave and the witches have to die. That made sense to me, but no, I I didn't. By the end of this episode, it kind of leaves you wondering, were they actually dead or did they just fall asleep? Because they kind of just fell over and it
Yeah,
looked like they just passed out. I'm like, oh,
yeah, yeah. I saw Journeyman just poke his head in, so let me add him to the stage.
What an episode.
how's it
What
I
going,
an ep
Journeyman?
loved it. I loved the whole episode.
What?
That was so great.
To quote
I
Meatloaf,
quit.
don't be sad because 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Why?
It's treason, then.
Why? Did you really not like it?
I was left I was left underwhelmed. I don't know how else to put it. Like
Explain.
it
I
didn't
need
shed
an
light on any
explanation.
like it okay, the I posed the question to Travis. I was like, what twist like what deception, what twist, what was there in this episode? And Travis says, "Well, you know, you have Saul's impossible choice at the end where he's left choosing, do I say like I'm not able to save both of them. I'm going to let May die so that I can save Osha." And
Which
so,
I
I mean,
didn't like that because I'm like, you could have literally, because he was holding up the bridge at that point. He could have saved both, but he chose to save OSHA because he had an attachment. That's where like the cover up thing is becomes a
See,
thing. It's like I have an attachment to her, so I'm going to save her.
yeah, that was the twist for me. That was like the moment where like, because we knew something about this story wasn't adding up. I wasn't expecting that to be it because we didn't get that vibe at all from the first time we saw that scene. Like like you see Saul just it's a there's a few references to movies outside of Star Wars that I'll mention later, but it was just the first out of character thing Soul did. Well, not the first, but the big one.
Yeah.
And then the what's his name? Like where we get the behind the scenes of him and
Torben
getting with the mother and like all that conversation inside her head or inside his head, which we knew something weird was going on because after in the first scene he just kind of like he kind of looked shocked and dazed at like what was going on. Like he didn't really understand what was going on. So getting that perspective, you kind of understand everything. Really, the thing that got me though was me seeing the Wookiee fight. I really love that part. I just wanted to see a Wookiee fight. So that's
I will say, Torben had some moves. I mean, he was like, woo, 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 woo. Like it. I enjoyed that. I will say that I enjoyed that.
He watched Revenge of the Sith, definitely.
Yes, he did.
He was doing all the moves. He was doing all the revenge. He's like, I'm gonna do all the moves that Anakin and Obi-Wan did in that movie.
Yeah.
I loved it.
My only, like, I guess, like some of the only things I didn't like about it are it kind of made so basically the reason that this whole thing happened was Torben was homesick and he wanted to go home. And so that's really why he went after the girls in the first place. That's what caused the whole thing.
I don't know if it was because he was homesick. I think he was. This is my interpretation of it. I could be totally wrong. I think he was. I would think he was fearful of their power. He didn't want to he didn't want to be on that planet. It's not like, oh, I just really want to go back to Coruscant. I think it's two things. I think he was just tired of being there in the first place. But I got the hint that he was like, he didn't want to be anywhere near that power. I don't know, Travis. What did you think? What was your interpretation of him wanting to leave the planet?
We were talking last week. Well, was it last week or was it a couple days ago? Sorry, the last stream. It was. We were talking about Vernestra possibly being an abusive master. That's what you were theorizing. That's the vibe I got from Indara. There was a lot of times in this episode where she seemed off. There was the part where she like flat out just starts hitting Soul. There's a few scenes where she's just staring at Torben like she's about to hit him, and he looks really ashamed and scared. She answers everything that Soul says. It could be a drinking game. Every time Soul mentions a concern, she comes back, well, that's because of this. He's like, I think they're being mean to the children. Well, it's important for them to learn self-defense. Well, their mother was very annoying. Mothers are like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you just find an excuse for everything, don't you? But there was also, did you get the vibe that she didn't actually call the Jedi Council like she said?
Yeah, I think that was kind of implied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Torben maybe didn't want to be a Jedi. That's just this. I've only seen the episode for like I saw the episode like maybe 10 minutes, like 15 minutes ago, but it almost seemed like Torben was afraid of his own master and he wasn't really sure he wanted to be a Jedi. That's my first takeaway from it.
Yeah, I think that adds up.
I think what this episode really comes down to me though is like the intentions were good behind everyone. No one wanted to do anything drastic. It's just the emotions have gotten the better of both sides. And that's why everything happened. The Soul and Torben, really Soul, wanted to protect the girls. Torben just wanted to get off and go back to Coruscant, really. But for the most part, the main people that we're speaking about, Soul, he wanted to protect the girls. The main mother for the witches wanted to protect the girls, but she wanted to do it their way. She wanted to respect their wishes of what they wanted to do. but the other one wanted to protect him and keep him there. Like everyone's doing it for their own reasons and good reasons, but when you have that conflict, that's what it kind of boils down to. But I think what's really weird and interesting about the show is like they were using the children, both of them were using the children for their own reasons. Saul was using OSHA to so that he could have his own apprentice and like get like an in with the witches, but then the other one was doing it through May, and I'm like, that's really interesting and weird. But they're the weakest and the most vulnerable, so of course you're gonna try and do that. But that's kind of what I've noticed about the whole episode. But I really did like it. I thought it gave us a lot of insight. I wasn't expecting a full flashback episode though. I was expecting it to cut like in and out of like what we're doing now versus back then. But I'm kind of glad they did a full flashback episode, and the episode actually makes sense because I think what they're doing is they gave us this full flashback, and what you can kind of picture in the background is what's going on in the now, kind of like in your head, your own picture. That you can just hear like Soul, and really, if you want to do it, Kymir somewhere in the background is probably there telling both of their stories. Because what's the deal with Kymir? Like we still don't know like why or how he's there. So you got to think like they're telling both of their stories. This seems more like a perspective of Soul's story. It doesn't seem like Kymir's story yet.
Yeah, I guess so. I think the issue I'm having with it is
Sure.
I appreciate, like you said, the perspective that it gives us from Soul's point of view. I think like the marketing behind the episode that Star Wars put out on Twitter was like the truth is revealed, which the show did a good job with that. The truth was revealed. We saw exactly what happened. But was it really? Did it really?
I think what you're mad at is like the unsatisfied feeling of like it really wasn't as big a cover up as what we thought was going on.
Well, I mean, maybe, but did it really lend any light into what we didn't already know? Because we've already seen that Saul has had a darker side to him. Like I think that's been implied throughout the entire show. Like we knew, like it didn't. It was kind of predictable, and I think it was going to be. I think it was. It would be fine if it was earlier on in the season, but for it to be so late into the season, it's kind of like I felt like a lot of it was
Unnecessary.
predictable, and I was hoping that there would be more of a bent to it that we didn't see this coming. Like I think I would agree that the choice that Saul had at the end, like okay, that adds a lot of value to his character. Now we know what he's been wrestling with for all of these years, and I'm curious of how he's going to present that to May. But other than that, like what did we
really gain? That's true.
I mean, I suppose we learned more about this Virgins in the Forest, which we can talk about in a little bit. But Travis, what do you have some thoughts?
I think the key thing to note, and how's it going on program, and Eddie from on program, and there's a few other people in the chat saying some nice stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to get to those in a second.
The big thing is, when we left off last episode, the question is, how much does this episode change how we interpret that interaction next episode? And I actually think quite a bit. Like there's a lot that's going to be different now. Like, and Journeyman, you put it best. Like you gave a really excellent summary of the episode and how like all the characters' intentions were good, which is key to note. It's not so much an episode about drastic events. It's a show. It's an episode about drastic choices, which inevitably influence events moving forward. But in addition to learning about Soul and May. One thing that I think maybe was said before, but it definitely wasn't. I don't. Maybe it was mentioned. Did they mention that Soul killed Mother Anastasia right in front of May? Did they mention that?
Um, when you say they, do you mean like have they mentioned it
Yeah, in the
previously to
show,
this
I don't
episode?
recall that at all.
No.
See, that's
No.
huge because now we understand why May doesn't like OSHA. We at first we thought May didn't like Soul because he took away OSHA from her. Now we understand why she really doesn't like him because she ran outside and he just stabbed her mother right in front of him, which is
Which
a
I'm
neat. Sorry, you go.
no, sorry. The only thing I have on that is kind of going back to the virgins that we want to get to. Like, what was she? What was she releasing her from? Like, she was just gonna go in to be like this dust and then release her from. That's kind of what I'm confused at. Is like she's like, I was gonna release OSHA because that's what she wanted.
Because OSHA,
What
I
does
think,
that
was
mean?
yeah.
Like, was because they said they were like symbiotes or like I don't know, whatever, like really symbiotic. Like they were basically
Mhm.
the same person, just like I don't want to say clone because that's not the right word, but like they were made the exact same way
Yeah.
and had the exact same DNA. So they were basically the same person. When she says I was going to release OSHA, I'm confused on that. Like, was she going to release her from that uh, uh, where she was, like during the fire, or was she like
That's a great question.
basically
Yeah.
like kill May or kill OSHA and then have the other one be OSHA or May or whatever? Like, you kind of get what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a good question because this is the first time we've seen the witches. It made me laugh every time they did it, and Ryan has it as the background of the episode. Every time the witches like do that thing where they're like, it made, and they turn into that like black moth thingy, whatever the heck that
Mhm.
was. They didn't make it clear when Coral does it. It looks like she. First off, we don't know if she died. It looks like she could
Mhm.
have just disappeared,
Mhm.
but it looks like that happens when you possess somebody because that's what Coral did that when she possesses Kalnaka. And I'm not sure if you either of you have seen the original Ghostbusters movie,
Been a long time.
but it's a
No.
pretty it's a pretty heavy-handed callback to Ghostbusters where I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're referencing Ghostbusters" when Coral disappears. And first off,
Mhm.
when she yells, it makes me laugh every time. She's like,
Yeah.
"You should not have brought him here." And then
Fight
Torben's like
me.
he's like, "My mind is clear." And she's like, "I'm not talking to you. I'm
Yeah.
talking about him." And then
She
they
kind of
do the
sounds
same
like
thing in
the.
Ghostbusters, but instead where Gozer, the main villain, disappears, and then she's like, "Choose the form of the destructor." And basically, the Ghostbusters, the first thing that pops in their brain, the destructor of New York City will show up in that form, and one of them thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and that's what shows up. But instead of the
Mhm.
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, we get Kalnaka. But it's unclear the full power of like the full implication of when you turn into the black smoke. Does that mean you're going to possess someone? In that case, when Mother Anastasia was doing that, she was presumably about to possess somebody. But I feel like it was intentional that we didn't know what she was about to do because Soul assumes that she's about to do something bad and kills her.
Yeah. Well, one thing I had to go back and rewatch that part because as Anastasia was dissipating, May was also starting to dissipate as well.
And that's
I missed that. Yeah.
So
that's kind of what I'm asking is like, was
it was like she was trying to save May. Was my impression of it. Is she was trying because Torben ignites his lightsaber. They're about to start fighting, and that's when she does that. And as she's dissipating, May starts to dissipate, and it was like but she was about to make May either that or she was about to possess somebody, but because May is we presume May to be connected to Anastasia, maybe they're connected in that way, and
Oh, you're right. they both have. She has the marking, so she would be able to do. Okay,
And they say
maybe.
that they're supposed
Yeah.
to take
Their
the
place.
mother's place. I almost got the impression of like, is this almost like the ability to transfer the mother Anastasia? Was it like we're getting into essence transfer and maybe transferring essence into these twins? I don't think so, but I don't know. I had a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
I think what was happening. Yeah, I didn't notice that May was doing that too when she did
Mhm.
that. I think in that moment, Mother Anastasia, she had made it clear she didn't want violence, and she was already at odds with Coral. And
Mhm.
then there's that moment where Soul asks her, like, what did you do? Like, how were the children made? And Coral's even looking at her like, what are you going to tell him? Like, because I kind of want to know too, or whatever. Like, it felt like
Mhm.
that. I think Mother Anastasia knew there was no safe way out for her and May. If Osha's going with the Jedi, there's no safe way out except if she gets May out of there. And I
Mhm.
think she was just trying to get May out of the situation to try to avoid violence as the best she knew how, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because she obviously, by doing that, I don't think she was trying to like kill anybody I don't think she was doing anything evil, because she said, I don't want violence. And if she wants Osha to go with the Jedi, even after Soul stabs her, because she doesn't like try to hurt him after he stabs her. She just explains, like, I was trying to help Osha. So whatever it was, I don't think it's very much presented that Soul interprets things as negative, even when they're not.
Mhm.
We get that line early where I think I just watched the episode, so I might not get it right. I think Indara says to him, I don't tell my apprentice the answers. I teach him to find the answers himself. And we see that when Soul is like watching the scenes that we saw in the previous episode, he's like, some of the dialogue is going in and out, and he's only hearing and seeing like the parts that look bad. Like when he finds Coral with the girls in the woods, in the other episode, we knew that she says, like, you shouldn't be out here. It isn't safe. Let's go. It's clear that she's trying to get them to safety because it's not safe in the woods. Here,
Mhm.
it's just like, what are you doing out here? But you don't hear the rest of it. And it just looks like she's a mean mother pulling them in. And we get a callback to, I remember the moth scene. No, it was weird because they don't look like moths. And when Soul cuts that Umbra moth in half
Mhm.
in episode 4, I think,
Mhm.
I always, like, from that moment, I knew that moment was going to come back later, that it was reflective of something important. And we brought it up last episode where we're showing that Soul, he prepared, like when he took out his lightsaber to that moth, he assumed that it was a threat. And despite the fact that it was him pulling out his lightsaber that made it a threat. And then
Mhm.
he waited for it to come over to him, and then he cut it in half. He has the same reaction when he sees Mother Anastasia turning into that black mist. He assumes that it's a threat, takes out his lightsaber and stabs it.
Mhm.
He doesn't have all the information. He only absorbs the negative, so he sees everything as negative. If that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
what was my takeaway from it.
I
He
also don't
has a
blame
lot.
him though, because he's in a pressure situation. Like, it's kind of, I don't want to make those connections, but it's like whenever you're in a high pressure situation, you like that, even the smallest movements or anything like that could set anyone off. So like,
Yeah.
But
you
it's not the Jedi way.
it's not. But I
So
think that's another lesson. But I think that's another lesson that everyone kind of needs to understand, is like even the smallest decisions have consequences down the road, whether we like them or not. Like, our consequences come back to bite us, essentially. Like, and like at the end of the episode, they could have easily said and told Osha the truth, and it probably would have saved us a lot of trouble. But they held it off for 16 years and said,
Well, that
we're
was
going to keep
Indara's
this
fault.
quiet. No, but that's her. But all of them agreed on it. That's the thing. Like, they all went with it, and
Mhm.
that's kind of a lesson that you need to understand is like even our smallest decisions, have consequences down the road, and that's why Torben, that's why he's been meditating the whole time, because he already had his mind, messed with the first time, and we saw him meditating before when the girls came up. Like after that happened, like he began meditating, and so he just said, "I'm not going to deal with anyone, and I'm just going to be like no one's going to mess with my mind again." And he did it for 16 years, and he said, "No, not again." Now you still had to live with the guilt and the consequences of that, and that's why he drank the poison. But they all agreed to it.
Yeah. One thing I want to touch on, kind of maybe shifting thought to what we could see next week, and then we can bring it back to this episode. But Soul is certainly starting to show all the telltale signs of someone who's getting pulled into the direction of the dark side. Strong attachments to Osha, lots and lots of fear. I think that kind of hits on what you guys are saying with, him constant whenever he's faced with something, he becomes fearful. There isn't a lot of like nobleness in that moment. It's like, oh, this is bad, stab, or this is bad, lightsaber, slice. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation from fans throughout the entirety of the season that some were saying he was a Sith Lord, but I don't think he's a Sith Lord. Do we think that he dies in the end, or do we think that maybe he goes down a dark path and maybe just leaves the Jedi or something?
I think what would kind of be right is if Osha and May, he does turn bad, but Osha and May are the ones to confront him and like put 16 years behind them officially. And like, even though Soul has done a lot for Osha and like, kept her safe and all that, but still it's like they basically like ruined family. And so that's what May's wanted, and probably now that's probably what Osha's gonna want. It's like that would be an interesting kind of circles, because Star Wars pretty much does that pretty well. It's like the storyline goes in a circle pretty much, and I think that would be a interesting way to finish it out.
I think you just predicted the last episode, Journeyman. I think I know. Yeah, that was a great observation. Star Wars they kind of bring things full circle. This like the inciting incident of the show is Soul not being strong enough to save both of them. He can only save one, so he has to choose. So I could almost see it the last episode. There's a situation where he has to save both of them, and then the only option is if he dies. So he kills himself so they can live. That seems like the direction they would go. And then if you want to add an extra layer of cheese to it, like he isn't strong enough to save them, so he like has to like fall or something so they can both live, and then they both save him at the last second. Something like, I could see something like that. It's probably the first thing I said. That sounds like something they would do in this show.
Yeah, I do like the idea of Soul having to make a choice again, facing another impossible choice, and this time getting it right in the sense of he's able to save both of them.
Just like Anakin.
That would be like poetry.
It's the typical redemption arc, and I would like it.
Well, a nice parallel to it's a nice parallel to Anakin, where he makes the wrong choice in saving Mace Windu over Palpatine, and then that comes full circle when he has to choose between Luke and Palpatine.
Yeah. This, I mean, we'll see how it ends up. I gotta this up on screen on program with a super generous $10 super chat. Thank you, Eddie. That means a lot. Says lots of fun hanging with y'all. Super fun diving into the weeds with you. I appreciate you being here, and thank you to Travis for Travis is actually the one who had him join the Discord and everything. I joined his. I was on in the chat of the On Program podcast. I think you guys stream on Fridays. Is that right, Travis? Do they stream on Fridays?
Oh, I'm not
Friday
part of it,
nights.
but yeah, I don't know. I'm very bad at like remembering.
Travis is like, I don't know what day it is.
Okay,
I just like there's
no. I know what day it is. I can't name half of my family members' birthdays, but I can name my neighbor. I remember but I remember my neighbor's pug's birthday downstairs.
I thought you
July
meant to say
16th.
you couldn't name your family members. I was like, okay,
No,
we got real problems here.
Yeah, sure I can. There's
need to help.
mom,
Mom and
grandmother.
I'm like, it's not that hard, man.
It's probably not hard for Osha and May. They're like, name your family members. Oh, there's mother. There's
Mother?
mother,
The
other
second
mother,
mother?
from another brother, mother.
Mother from the fourth mother. Yeah. He says, yes, it's Friday. See, I know my stuff.
I gotta point out, I think Eddie from On Program made a pun when he said lots of fun hanging out with y'all, super fun diving into the weeds with you, because they literally dive into weeds in this episode. That's like the first thing we see him doing. So I was like, he's pulling weed out of the ground. He looks so miserable. Like, did you see that when he's picking the grass up and he's shoving it in that box? You can see it in his eye. He's like, why did I decide to become a Jedi? Like, you can see it. Like, he's like, why?
And Torben's out, or not Torben, Kelnaka has the metal detector.
What were they looking for? Like,
I don't know. The life of a Jedi, I guess, which is a good point. Well, let me get to some of these chats, and I actually want to circle back to that, because in all seriousness, they were looking for something. I mean, they were there for a reason, and they bring some stuff up at the beginning of the episode. We'll circle back to that. Let's see. On program, Eddie says, really loved how impossible most characters' choices felt. Yes. I got to go back and watch the episode again. Like I was telling Travis at the beginning of this, I got to let it soak in a little bit more on these types of things. So when I come on stream, I'm going off of my thoughts. And what did you say, Travis? You said sometimes. What was your pizza analogy? You had a good pizza analogy.
Oh God!
You said you can go. You see. Yeah, please share. Please share.
Hold on. It was a really bad analogy, so I'm surprised you want me to bring it back. I feel honored, but it was when Journeyman was playing basketball.
Yeah,
which I can't play, by the way. I'm so bad at
it. I can't either. Don't worry.
But I said that it was before you jumped in, Journeyman. Ryan and I were talking, and he said that how he was disappointed. He felt underwhelmed, and I was conceding that when there's a difference between creating a bunch like huge expectations and then just expecting what's offered to you, if that makes sense. And the analogy I used was if a chef takes bread, cheese, marinara sauce, and pepperoni, and they go into the kitchen, you're going to assume rightfully they're going to make a pizza. So if they come out with anything else besides a pizza, you'd be kind of like, oh, that's not that's not what normal people would do. But so it was more so that when you see it as a really bad analogy.
No, I'm laughing at On Program's point.
I think this sums up what you're trying to say, Travis.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm not touching that one.
Your point is you're trying to tell me that I should just be happy with what we get and
no, I didn't say it like that. I said that it's understandable when things don't go the way you think when things don't go the way you're led to believe they are.
Can you at least concede where I'm coming from, though?
Yeah,
like,
I can.
What did it not just feel like all of this was expected?
Yes. I would. My example to you would probably be Andor Kenobi or something like that, where it's like it's very underwhelming, but it's like we kind of know where we're going at some point.
I just
I
thought,
didn't expect him to be digging grass out of the ground in this episode. That caught me off guard.
yeah, well, I didn't expect the Jedi to be just metal detecting and testing grass. Yeah, I certainly didn't
Which they're
expect
trying
that.
to find a force sensitive
Virgins.
thing, but they're metal detecting, which makes once again, I'm still confused about the whole virgins thing. Is that like a diet? Like I'm confused. Is the virgins like a diet in the force? Because that's the first thing I thought of. It was like, oh,
Well,
virgins? Are we talking about diet?
I didn't even make it very far. Let me go back to some of the comments real quick.
I'm still looking at that one.
Yeah, that's the last one. Let me go back to the topic. It says it's hard to blame any of them for making the choices they did, given what already been established for their characters. Um, yeah,
Can
they
I say
were.
something very
Mhm.
briefly? Star Wars has always, this has happened since the beginning of time. Well, not since the beginning of time. Not since, like, because that implies that, like, since the times of Jesus. I mean, since the times of Star Wars. There's always been a character choice that people have criticized in the movies. And then they were just like, why did the character do that? And then when you grow up, you're like, oh, you just weren't, you were a child, so you didn't see the logic behind it. Like Lando, like everyone, I think when people were kids, a lot of people thought Lando was a bad guy because of what he did. And then you
Mhm.
see it as an adult, like what he did. He had to like defy Darth Vader to his face. He had him right next to him. He choked him out. And he made like he had to make the best of a really bad situation. He sold out his friends, but he did it in a way where he had it planned out, where he literally gives up everything to make sure they're safe. Or the one that really bugs me is when at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, when Lando is wearing Han's clothes, everyone's like, why is he wearing his clothes? I'm like, did you see him? He just defied Darth Vader to his face. We saw him run with the clothes he had on his back into the Millennium Falcon, and they left. He didn't stop by to get his capes before he left. He had the clothes because that's what was available to him. Like, so I think sometimes people will say a character choice is dumb, and it really just requires a little bit more thought, and then you maybe understand it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and
so-
I go ahead.
Sorry to go. If you want to go down another comment, I kind of agree to somewhat of an extent. I think the writing was okay because the first thing that really got my mind was like he said 7 weeks. We've been here 7 weeks, and I'm like, can you not make it more Star Warsy? Like say 7 cycles or 7
Yeah.
rotations or seven something other than we've been here 7 weeks. I'm like, doesn't really sound Star Warsy to me, but okay. Like,
Remember when they said paycheck in the first episode?
they
Remember, she's like, hey, it's a paycheck. And I'm like, that threw me off. Or when Soul says, all right, it's time for lunch. I'm like, I know
Time for
lunch,
lunch.
like that's reaching, but I'm like, it threw me off because I hadn't heard it.
Yeah, it's like you don't expect it to be in the Star Wars universe.
I understand
Like
they're trying to
lunchtime.
relate us, but I'm just like, let's try and come up to be a little bit more creative. Weeks. Okay. I feel like I'm at work again.
Yeah.
7 weeks.
Here, this is DM says this is more my speed. Love the channel. Sad to say, horrible episode. No Sith, no impact. Witches can turn to smoke. Jedi are evil. Witches death stupid. Why can Soul control a bridge but not two girls? Horrible writing. Okay, I don't agree with everything there, but I think DM was underwhelmed as well by the episode.
You said
so.
that was more your speed.
I liked the. Here, let me just dissect this. Obviously, I didn't think we were going to get any Sith because we knew this episode was going to be a flashback completely. Yeah, I mean, it would be cool to. Well, I won't even go down that road. Witches can turn to smoke. I did think that was cool. I loved how the power of Minnie was demonstrated at the end of like it's implied that Coral to me, I took the Kelnaka mind control thing as Korra was not able to do that by herself. Like
No.
her essence was in Kelnaka, but it took all of the witches, the power of many,
Mm.
to be able to actually carry out what
Like
was
actually
happening.
control them. Yeah, because
Yes, I mean
it took
they
one of
literally
them
took
just
control of
being
a
inside the
Jedi.
head. Yeah.
Yeah, they took control of a Jedi and was, causing the Jedi to fight. I don't know. That was my interpretation of that. I will say, in terms of the witch's death, I think Travis pointed out, who knows if they even actually died, first of all. They kind of just all fell.
They fell asleep.
That's honestly what I thought. I thought she was just like using the force somehow to put them like all to sleep and just like stop them. That's what I interpreted.
It looked like, it looked like
the
when
more
you're
I
at
think,
sleep.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it looked like, no, this is stupid. It's another dumb analogy. It looks like not as bad as the pizza one, but
Not
it looks
the
like
pizza
when
one again.
you're staying up past, you're at a sleepover at a friend's house, and your mom really wants you to go to bed, but it's like she's like, lights out at 10. It's 2:33 a.m. and you guys are laughing, and then you hear your mom coming. She shut off the lights and pretend you're asleep. And then,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
And the more I think about it now, though, like I'm wondering if there's not some truth to it. At first, I was kind of like, oh, they fell asleep, and I'm like, maybe they really did. Like, maybe they really are still there because I mean, did Indara really just commit a mass murder and like just? I mean, is she that powerful where she can just kill people with whatever she did?
That's a good point.
But the cover up, I will say that the cover up was May killed everyone. So
Because they thought that.
but at the time they seemed to be knocked out.
But my point is, what
I
did
feel
she
like-
do? Like, I
yeah,
don't need like a full explanation, but to me, it's sort of, it's either implied that she is so powerful that she
just killed him.
just can kill them by whatever she did, which we've never seen before, to my knowledge, or maybe she just, maybe in what she did was she released Kelnaka. And similar to how we see, like, I'm drawing a blank of, but like we've seen force users before when they use the force, they like kind of pass out, but because of how much
Sorry.
energy they were exerting.
You can't point to him. Luke Skywalker.
Yes, Luke. Thank you. I was like, I'm pretty sure Luke did that. So that was kind of my impression of whenever he was released and their power had no longer had any effect, they had just exerted so much power that they just passed out. Like, did she really just kill them all? Like, because to me, that's more for like, I suppose, like, I don't know, because like that wasn't really a big focus. The focus at the end of the episode was more on whether or not Soul's going to go to the High Council, and she's like, you can't kill Osha's dream. Like, it was more centered on Osha and Soul. It was like Indara just potentially murdered like a lot of people.
But maybe that's the whole cover up. Maybe, I mean, not cover up too, essentially, but like, that's really interesting. If they're alive, then why have they been keeping? That's
you're onto something. I think that I didn't even think about.
If they might be alive, let's just say, for hypothetical, they are alive. They're still keeping the lie together all these 16 years.
They might not have a ship.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Sorry, they might not. There's a delay, so I accidentally interrupt you guys sometimes.
No, you're fine.
They might not have ships, so they might just be stuck there.
Well, how does May get off the planet?
Huh? Because the Jedi. Wait, that's a good point. Well, Well, I don't. Well, I'm guessing that's where Kymir found her, right?
That's what we're assuming.
Yeah, he's older. He's old enough that he could have found her.
But
maybe Kymir's there all along.
Well, yeah, we did.
Maybe
in that poster, there is the part where I showed it to you. There's the poster where Kymir's overlooking the fire, presumably of this. It could just be made to look cool, but there is like that would be an interesting route to go. Is what if we found out, because May, part of why she's so mad is because her whole family's dead, and she has been talking about her family in the present tense. You notice that she says like, "I want my family." Like for a while she says like she keeps talking about them like they're still around. She did that when they were talking in the woods and before she stuns Osha. And for a while, I was thinking, oh, she's just delusional. She's in denial that her family's dead, and she wants to believe that there's still something to go back to, which could be the case, and I think is
Which
more
there is,
likely.
it's OSHA.
Yeah, but like I think she has like in addition to Osha, I think she's probably delusional. She has this idea that if she has her sister back, her whole life's just magically gonna like come back. But what
I
if
don't. I don't know.
Awesome.
Lucasfilm got him.
Again,
Let me bring it back. Travis, are you there? Are you all right?
are you okay? Are you all right?
We'll see if he comes back. The more as I was listening to Travis, I was also thinking like, we see from the perspective of this episode when we see them, it looks like they may have passed out, but we have to remember
Sure.
Soul in episode 3 when Soul and Osha are running past them, they look I mean they look dead.
They did look dead, yes.
So they're probably dead.
They're probably dead, yes.
So I have to go back and yeah, I have to go back on my statement. I don't think that they're just passed out. I think that they're actually dead.
They're probably dead, but just for the assumption of that, it's a good exercise to kind of go through.
Yeah. Highlighting this chat again on program. Thank you so much for your donation. I have to say, a lot of the money that we're receiving at the channel, I'm going to be putting into my character, which I had to bring up this Jedi here, who we're currently voting on the community tab what we want this character's name to be. So if you haven't casted your vote, go cast it. And then the channel members, the actual senators who are joint members of the channel will be casting the confirmation vote. So if you're not a member, make sure you become a member so you can cast the confirmation vote and be a part of further decisions in this character's story. The senators will be kind of controlling the story on this one. So it'll be a lot of fun. I really appreciate the donation on program, Eddie. Truly appreciate it. Let me bring back. Oh, we got Travis back.
While we're highlighting comments, I like the last one on program sent about
hit him with the reverse card. Travis is back. Can you hear us okay, Travis? Oh, it says you're backstage. I have you pulled up on the stream. Are you able to hear us okay? We'll get him back on here in a second. Here's another good comment from On Program. Says, my main gripe with this episode is that the Jedi were there for 7 weeks and they didn't see the Sith Hoover Dam right over the ridge. Yeah, they apparently didn't get out very much. Here we go. We got Travis
am
back.
I back?
You're back now.
I was in limbo for like 5 minutes.
I was like, Lucasfilm got him.
It is a big planet for that comment. So
yeah, this is
quite a way.
When I saw this comment, Travis, this kind of I remember our discussion last week. You were talking about how one of your big gripes with Star Wars is we tend to go back to the same place over and over again. And so I mean, I'm sure Brindok is a very big planet, so I suppose that they wouldn't have come across the Hoover Dam.
Yeah. Well, they had metal detectors, not castle detectors or witch detectors.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, it wasn't. My complaint wasn't that they go to the same locations. It's that entire planets are presented as one like town, like the one town we go to on a planet. That's the whole planet. But I'm like what's on the other side of Tatooine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, they said it was an old like mining like
Yes. Ooh,
and
Ryan,
so
sorry. You wanted to talk about the Vergence and the Force in the
Yeah.
planet.
Mhm.
I have some things to say about that, but I want to hear what you have to say about it.
No, go for it.
Um, they did they say it was a mining planet? They did, didn't they? They said it was something, but
well
I
they
actually did
said
not catch
the
that.
technology that was being used for the elevator was like it used to be like an old mining place
oh,
or something
okay,
of
that
that
makes
nature.
sense. Interesting.
Which that's kind of why I'm asking the question. So is Brindock was only used for the witches, or was the Empire and or not even Empire? Sorry, with like who at that time was mining at that point? There, that's kind of my question. It's like, how do you?
My theory, my interpretation of what happened there was I wrote down hyperspace disaster, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is in direct reference to the High Republic. Uh,
Is it the
as
first hyperspace disaster from what we read? Kind of a little bit.
isn't it
Yep.
called the Great Disaster? I mean, it has a specific name, right? The Great
Yeah, the
Disaster.
great disaster, the destruction. Basically, the nihil. He's given us a crash course in
Yeah, here we go.
the chat. You guys better buckle up.
Yeah.
But basically the marauders called the Nihil sabotage a ship in hyperspace called the Legacy Run, and this
Mhm.
ship is huge, and so it breaks into like 100 pieces, and these pieces are still going through hyperspace. So they come out of hyperspace and they're going in different directions, and basically the Jedi have to try to stop these hyperspace anomalies from crashing into planets, and it ends up and most of it ends up in something called the Hetzal system. And the way it's, I could be wrong, I might be, I'm probably wrong, but the implication here in those books, the Hetzal system is most affected by the Legacy Run disaster because it's like small chunks of debris, but coming at light speed, that's devastating. Um, so it may be this planet is in the Hetzal system, and they're saying that that's where this planet is. But I remember around the campfire, Indara says that the hyperspace disaster, presumably wreckage from the ship, smashed into this planet and made it uninhabitable. Now
Mhm.
there's life coming back. So that made
Mm,
me, so I surmised from that the witches found an abandoned planet and they decided to
Yes.
come here, and they're the reason why life, or they or May and Osha are the reason why life is coming back, and that's why they're here to investigate the Vergence. And what I wanted to bring up, one more thing, and I'll let you guys talk. But
Mhm.
um, this isn't the first time we've seen that. If you remember in Rise of Skywalker, while it isn't said, the opening scene with Kylo Ren finding the Wayfinder is on Mustafar.
Mhm.
And it didn't look like Mustafar. I remember in the movie because there's trees and everything.
Mhm.
Because I remember when we watched episode 3, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about. Me assuming that the entirety of Mustafar is a mining facility when there could have been other parts of it too. But in that movie, we're seeing in Rise of Skywalker, we see trees growing. But in the, I believe it's the visual guide for Rise of Skywalker, we reveal that Darth Vader, because of the presence of the dark side, was keeping life from growing on the planet. But once Darth Vader died, life started coming back. So, and I think it's interesting because it ties into this a little bit too. Except instead of like a natural disaster, we're dealing with the actual dark side, preventing life from growing. So yeah, it isn't really the first time we've seen that happen.
Yeah. Um, and it's specifically called a vergence. Which I'm just looking up the dictionary definition, and it doesn't really give me anything good. But I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this.
from Wikipedia, a vergence sometimes described as a force nexus. A nexus or a locus was an unusual yet naturally occurring concentration of force energy localized around a place, object, or person.
Subject to person.
If vergence centered on a location could give nearby force sensitive stronger interactions with the force, often including visions. That's from Wikipedia.
So do we think this has something to do with the eclipse? That like there's still the show is very centered around this eclipse. I don't know if it's just supposed to be some symbolic in some way or just I feel like I mean all the posters that Star Wars puts out has this eclipse in the background. Um
It looks cool.
it looks cool and I'm like maybe that's all there is to it is it just
No.
looks cool. But I feel like we haven't seen everything to do with that. I also wonder if like that tree that they keep going back to, that seems like it, when you talk about it being connected to a certain object, that tree that we find the twins at the beginning of episode 3, maybe that is strongly connected to the force in some way.
Wouldn't be the first time we've seen a force tree.
Yeah. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of conversation this week about the twins. I mean, it sounds like the Force, in some way, shape, or form, created these twins. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of conversation this week about how that ties
But
into
they call it
Anakin. And
artificial, so
Yeah.
it was manipulated
yeah,
by the Force.
that is true.
But then I asked my question, kind of poo-pooing on the show a little bit. It's like, but didn't Palpatine do that with Anakin though?
Like create Anakin.
Oh no, because no, that's right. Because sorry, that's a theory. Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
No, because in the prequels, she talks about like just it was a virgin birth basically. Like no one was there. It wasn't the father, and it's come to be like it was natural. No one else was manipulating it. Here, that's why it's unnatural. It's they were using the Force to manipulate it. So therefore,
Yeah,
it is not like Anakin. It is the opposite of what Anakin was.
yeah. I still think it is different than Anakin, where the Force itself intervened to. I think it was the work of Plagueis and Tenebris and Sidious trying to manipulate the midichlorians to create life, and the Force countered that with the creation of Anakin, where this still seems to be a manipulation of the Force in order to create life. And they're just taking advantage of the fact that they are at this place where there's a nexus or vergence in the Force, it seems like.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And their M count is high. The sample of blood came back, and they are very, very, very Force sensitive. So
I was waiting for Torben to. I was like, please don't say it. Please don't say it's almost high as Master Yoda. I'm like, please don't do that again. Like, I thought for a second they would.
Too much.
But you guys remember better than I do, probably. Did they in the investigation for what happened on Brendok? Did they mention that they went back to the planet at all? Or are they just taking their word for it?
I think they just took their word for it.
Really? That's interesting because it goes back to that idea you guys had of maybe the witches are alive. And that would be like perhaps they aren't spaceborne. Like they can't just leave. And then there's a question like someone in the comments would be like, well, how did they get there to begin with? But like it could be just a possibility where they don't have a way to get off, or maybe they've been searching for Osha and May this whole time and we don't know about it. But wouldn't it be fascinating if because it would present May with a choice at the end. Like, what if we found out the witches were alive this whole time? And this whole time that they've been on that planet, everyone's been dealing with this event their own way, with grief and everything. And what if we went back there and we found out the witches? This is a lot of speculation, but what if we found out the witches like started thinking about what they were doing and they were like, wow, like we kind of lost everybody. Like this isn't even worth it anymore. And then the reveal comes that they're still alive, and May and Osha have a choice of, hey, we can go back. Like we can make it, we can have our life back again. And they both have to choose again. That would be kind of interesting, but I don't think they would do that because frankly, it's not violent enough. It's not like, it's like having the characters resolve things with a conversation. It doesn't seem like the way that the show would end.
No, and I think it was while you were gone. Actually, we were talking about how from this episode, the perspective we saw in this episode, yeah, it looks like they just kind of fell asleep. But they very much looked dead in episode 3 when you see Soul and Osha
Yeah,
walking
they did,
through.
didn't they? Like there was
Yeah,
some wreckage. Like if they didn't die from that, probably the wreckage from
yeah,
like debris probably killed them.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, so I think it'd be really that would be interesting of like giving Osha and May the opportunity to just go back and uh, start over in some kind of odd
Ooh,
way.
or what about if it was a Mortis situation where
Oh,
we
don't get me
learned that
started on that.
life was? What if we learned that the planet is dying because they're gone? Because if all the witches are dead, the people that are bringing the life back to the planet are gone. So what if it's a situation where we're finding out like, oh my god, this planet's dying and we can't. It's a force. This is a force vergence planet, and it's dying because the people who are the vergence aren't there anymore. So Osha and May have to be the ones to go back to the planet so that there can be life on the planet. That would be a direction to go, and it would might tie into like why they keep showing that eclipse. I think it's even in the title of the show.
Mhm.
It's supposed to look like that. That's another direction I think.
Well, they they have an interesting conversation. Like, you know, the mother's gonna let Osha do, like, she chose and she chose her path, and she's gonna let her go. But then the rest of the crew's like, well, you're our leader, so we don't agree with that. And I kind of that might play into what you're saying is like, what if the only way they could survive is that they were both there? That'd be
That would be. I think if they went that route, I think that could possibly be a really nice way to end the
because there
show.
would be no reason for the backlash or like why they want it other than just to have them there. There'd be no reason for them to have that big of a backlash to OSHA leaving. It's like, okay, they made their decision. Really, the only person that would have a problem with that is the other mother that sort of
Yeah,
created.
we don't know if she's
But
dead or not. I don't. I got the implication she wasn't dead,
Mhm.
but we don't know.
Yeah, maybe she's still on Brindok possessing somebody. Maybe
Or
she's
maybe she's been with someone this whole time and we just don't know about it.
the
That's possible
stranger.
too.
ooh,
Uh, yeah, because there is that
ooh,
poster. Yeah, there is that possibility too.
that would be.
He says he's been a Jedi for a long time.
What if he was in that trance and he's been stuck there for like he was stuck there for a really long time? Because we
That's what I'm
also
saying.
don't know. Eddie from On Program, I brought up this idea of like, what if, and this is not the case, but there's no men on this planet. And there was we did before we knew the full context, and we still don't, of how the children were born.
Hmm.
I was thinking, like, what if we find out, like, they go into a room, like the Jedi, and we find a bunch of men with, like, their eyes blackened, and we find out that they've just been, like, putting men in this trance and taking their DNA to make the kids, and, like, how dark that would be. I don't think that's there. I don't think
I
that's
think that's too
necessarily.
dark for Disney.
Yeah, that's too dark. But or even something just like taking DNA from men without them having a say in it, or something like that.
Hmm.
But like revealing maybe that Chimere plays into that somehow. Like, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if he is directly tied to the witches, but I think there is a way to that is something that, and I think it's a critique that people are having. I think someone mentioned it here, like, hey, there was no Sith in this episode, so what was the point? And so people are probably wondering, well, how does Chimere factor into all this? Well, what if we find out at the end he factors into it more than we think he does?
Hmm. Well, the actors, Manny, whatever Jacinto, whoever plays the stranger, Chimere, and Amandala, who plays May and Hosha, did an interview. I think it was last week, and they're saying there's going to be some jaw-dropping moments in this finale. Lots of twists that we don't see coming, which they're paid to say this kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I think it's worth. They also said the show's going to take a. I don't remember if they said a darker or a very, very different turn in this last episode. And so maybe I was thinking this earlier, and I don't think I said it out loud, but as I was talking about how I was left a little bit underwhelmed, maybe we're gonna get one more flashback to Brindok or some sorts, and
that's
it's
what I'm
going to
thinking.
piece all the pieces together.
Yes.
And there's one more point of view that we're missing that actually sheds light, because I feel like
And
that's
it's-
what we're missing. Is like, okay, we understand Osha's perspective because this is what she believes. Like we
Yep.
knew Soul was, and the rest of the Jedi were dealing with something, and okay, we saw that on screen. But there's still one more piece that's like something doesn't. There's got to
doesn't
be one more
entirely add up.
twist. There's
Yeah.
got to be one more twist. So I'm like, maybe they're going to show us one last perspective, and maybe it's Chimere. He says,
Yep.
release the Chimere cut. Eddie says, I'm like, yeah, that maybe Chimere's there the whole time, and he gives one last perspective that we're missing.
What if this isn't going to happen? What if we find out that in the process of trying to make these twins, they accidentally conceived a boy, and now it's Chimere, and he is older, so it would add up. And they were just like, well, we're kind of a coven of witches. We made a mistake and made a boy. We can't really kill you or anything, so but we don't really accept you as one of us, but he's there anyway. That would be interesting, I think, where he's just like the black sheep of the group, or like we made you by accident, so you're not really one of us, and maybe there's some resentment there. But I don't think that's the case, because he would have mentioned that by now, I think. Like his resentment is towards yeah, whenever I say something, whenever I think something, I have a theory, I'm like, I know it's not going to happen. But that would be an interesting way to go. But Chimere's resentment is towards the Jedi, not these people.
And his master.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people were clinging to the comment that Soul makes in episode 5, where he's like, I sense something familiar. Like, is it more than just him seeing him on that planet, or are they brothers? Are they, did they train together at the temple? Like, a lot of people had questions on if there was more than to that.
Yeah.
There's got to be more, because why didn't they show May in this episode? After she fell.
You're right. Yeah.
Like there's still the Chimere cut, like he was saying. Like the first flashback scene was from Osha's perspective all those years ago. Now what we're getting is basically Soul's perspective, because that was the last thing that we saw in last week's episode of like, you were going to sit here and listen to me. Now we only need, the only other person that was probably there was Chimere, if he was there. But
in the last
May's perspective at that point.
Well, in the Last Jedi, didn't we get we got 3 perspectives, right?
In the Last Jedi? Oh, you're taking me back. Okay.
Yeah, we got Kylo Ren thinking that Luke attacked him. We have Luke thinking that Kylo Ren attacked him, and then what actually happened. So Kylo Ren thinks that Luke came into his room to kill him. Luke Skywalker thinks that Kylo Ren was going bad. Well, it isn't even that. He just didn't want to tell the truth. But wait, did we only get 2? Maybe we only got 2.
No, I think
once again, I'm wearing the shirt. Last week I couldn't pronounce the planet from the movie.
I want to say,
yeah, we only got 2, because then Luke goes to Yoda for advice, and that's why.
You're right. Kylo Ren's is just the right one.
Well, they're both right in their own respect.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Luke knew that he was going bad, but
I could have sworn there's 3, because I think it was
they
like,
show it a few times.
it was like Kylo's perspective, Luke's perspective, and then they bridge the two together to give you what
Yeah,
actually happened.
There's like the part where Luke is like walking and he's
Well-
like, he called me a doo-doo head, so I went to confront him.
Here, Eddie says, no, it was Luke's whitewashed version, Kylo's angry one, and
Yes,
Luke's
you're
more
right.
honest
Yeah,
one
that's
that
what it
had
was.
full context. So it's like if they parallel that, there would be one more.
Yes, to pull everything
I mean,
together.
I feel like we
Like,
kind of
to
got
actually bring
everything.
Mm,
I feel like we kind of got
we
everything.
still haven't got May's perspective. Because
You're
after
right,
after she falls, what else?
yeah,
Like,
you're right.
Other than her falling after that, what other context do we need at that point? That's the only other context that we need.
There was one more, going back to like reveals in this episode. There was another big one, which was more something that you could more piece together, I think. And that is May burning down the place was kind of an accident. She like she lights the book on fire, and then she realizes how out of control it is, and she drops it, and then the fire starts spreading. We didn't really have that.
That was my other thing I liked about it. Or really, no, sorry, I take it back. I really didn't like about it. I'm like, oh, it's a little kid. It's fire. What does fire do? It burns. And then she's surprised that it's burning stuff. I'm like, wow, they actually wrote a little kid perfectly.
Yeah,
The way you explained that was perfect. What does fire do? It burns.
I have a story about causing fire, but I won't derail us again. I'll save it for the Discord. But it resulted in a burn on my chest. But
oh no.
Yeah, but she holds up that thing with the fire in it. What was that? Was it a lamp?
It was like a Jedi
Just a
book or
lantern.
something like yeah.
I think we were looking at a kid. It is a kid, so we're looking at a kid thinking before they do something. Like she was like, "I'm gonna use this fire," and then she realizes, well, going back to what you said, oh yeah, fire burns, and it was like the idea, like she was so angry that fire was the first thing that she had nearby that encapsulated what her anger was in that moment, like her emotion. And then it just got the better of her and she accidentally did that. But we also didn't, so that adds a bit of content. Oh God.
No, on program, sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought you said something.
Derailing us again.
Kids are dumb. I picked up an actual hot colas can. Mine was similar. And it's even less excusable because I wasn't actually a kid. Now that I mentioned, I was like 16 years old. So it was really stupid. It's double stupid.
Brain's still not fully developed at 16, so you get a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
Right,
Isn't it amazing? Like, because we were talking about The Last Jedi, and we were trying to figure out what happened. It's amazing. Like, once you're in front of a camera, you forget the most basic things about movies that you've watched a million times. You just forget like entire details. You're just like, wait a minute, how did they get off Tatooine in A New Hope? There was a guy piloting a ship, but I can't remember his name. That happens so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Once you get in front of a camera, things change.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Let me finish my thought. May, we had some context with May starting the fire that it wasn't entirely intentional what she did. I think it was more an idea that she was angry, and then she caused the fire and it got really bad. But the other thing that we didn't really have context for was how much Coral was abusing her before that. Like she's screaming at her and pressuring her to do everything, and she like literally, I feel like she picks her up and throws her into a room at one point.
Yes, something like that does happen.
And Mother Coral, I'm not saying my mother is anything like Mother Coral, but when Mother Coral yelled, it reminded me of when my mom yelled, and that is not pretty. Oh, you get scared so fast.
Wasn't she hyping? She's like hyping May up. She's like, "Get angry" or something like that.
Yeah, she did.
Well, she was basically like fight. Her whole point was like fight for what you want, and you want May to stay, and so or you want Osha to stay, so fight for it. That's kind of
there was a line, and I know. Yeah, the episode has been out for like 5 hours, but that line that you said, Ryan, I think it's going to be a meme. in a few
Get
days.
angry. Yeah.
It was something like that where I'm like, wow.
She's like hyping her up for the big game. She's like,
She
go
was
out
hyping
there and
up.
make me proud.
She was hyping up that stick too. Like every time she pulled, they made me really afraid of her. Like I got really scared. I would not want to be the kid that brings a D on my report card home to her because
Yeah.
she just pulls out that baton looking thing, and I'm like, ugh.
She got a voice on her for sure. She can yell.
Yeah, she has a smoker. She's like smoking cigarettes outside the coven and yelling at everybody all the time. She's like, "Get back inside and eat your supper."
Yeah. I got it did. I feel like her character could come back in the end and be important. I really
Oh,
do.
I did
Yeah.
too.
You want another thing that's not going to happen? I got another
Go
idea.
for it.
What if when Soul is, because May is tied down? What if when Soul is, because we think maybe, what if she's attached to somebody and we don't know? What if when
Mhm.
Soul, because Soul is starting to get like, he's really in a not the best spot anymore. He's starting to really get angry. What if when he's like yelling at her and telling the story, his eyes go black and like he just pukes coral out of his mouth, and like Mother Coral is just no, I was picturing no, not like that, but like in a ghost, like in a supernatural movie where black smoke just starts coming out of his mouth, and we
Uh-huh.
find out that Coral has been with him the whole time, but May is like tied up, so she can't do anything, and then Coral just starts raising hell in the ship. That would be one way to go, but I don't think that. Once again, it's not going to happen.
She could be. I think it'd even be more interesting if she was May.
No, I thought you were going to say Basil. That would
Well, that
explain
would be
those moves
something.
he had when he tried taking her down.
But wouldn't it be interesting? Like, I just gotta. I feel like there's a big twist coming right at the end. I don't know, and then I don't know exactly what it is. I think I highlighted this comment, but Senator Tony is in the chat. Good to see you, Tony. Thank you
Let's go,
for
Tony.
being a channel member. Really appreciate it. Says my impression was a very convoluted episode, again with more questions than answers. I think that's what he meant to say. A complete breakdown of accidents that not one individual is at fault, but all made bad choices. Okay, I will also say I was really starting to I think a lot of fans were nitpicking at this, but a lot of people were getting frustrated with how the Jedi are being portrayed in this show, of just kind of like stupid and incompetent and not good. And while yes, I feel like what this episode did was show them this, like everybody had good intentions, but Soul's attachment, his emotional like Indara was not wrong. Like,
No.
was he doing the right thing by trying to save them? Yes, but the fact that he was so emotionally attached,
But the
and then
emotions got the better of him. Yeah.
and really, I think a lot of times in Star Wars, I think when we think about emotions, we think of attachment. Well, I think in a certain way, Torben was very emotional too. Like he was, they were there to do a job, and he was letting his feelings and his emotions get in the way of him doing his job. And he's really the one that gets the ball rolling in the actual the tragedy of it all. He's the one who actually goes to there. I think had he not have done that, I don't think that it would have ended as poorly potentially. I don't know.
I didn't expect him to be the reason why everything kind of goes wrong either going into this.
Well, he had the emotions of wanting to go home, and then when he found the answer, he ran after it. Like he didn't care really what the consequences were. He just like, I want to go home.
Yeah.
Here's the answer. I'm going after it.
Yeah.
He's like, I left my AirPod charging case at home, so they just died, and I'm really getting sick of it.
Tony says the Starlight Beacon callback was great. Explains the relics on the ground and why Osha got an interest in the Jedi. Where was the callback at? Was that in the book?
Oh my gosh, Tony got something I didn't even notice. Wow. Well, he's talking about the hyperspace disaster.
How's that
and how
related
a
to
guy
Starlight
by the
Beacon?
huh?
How's the hyperspace disaster related to Starlight Beacon? Because it wasn't in a ship that was destroyed in the
Oh, maybe
Hyperspace
maybe they say Starlight Beacon, but that's tied to the Great Disaster because Starlight
Oh,
Beacon gets
okay.
destroyed too. But
Gotcha.
there were things, there were like metal things sticking out of the ground. Soul's hiding behind one of them, and I didn't register what that was, but it's probably wreckage from when pieces of the ship smashed onto the planet. You know, the big
Mhm.
round thing that he was hiding behind in that one
Mhm,
scene,
mhm.
or maybe it was one of the kids was doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that
Yeah.
explains why there'd be metal detectors then. Oh, wow. Wow. I just answered. Yeah, I just answered my own question. I'm like, why would they have metal detectors? I'm like, well, they got it. They got wreckage of a ship smashed onto the planet and going at light speed. So I guess they're looking for that for some reason.
Yeah. Tony says adding the complexity of both mothers going into green smoke could have been done differently without introducing other questions.
Going.
Could have been done differently without introducing other
Oh,
questions.
okay. I see what he's talking about. He mean like what we were talking about because we don't
Right.
know the full implications of what that means when they turn into smoke because we only
Mhm.
saw it happen once, and it was when someone possessed somebody. But even the first time when Mother Anastasia possesses Torben, she doesn't turn to smoke. She does, but when all the witches possess Kalnaka, they do. So
Mhm.
we still, yeah. So there's like probably people wondering, like, and I'm still wondering, like, what was exactly was Mother Anastasia doing when she was doing that with May?
Right. Yeah. Oh, now Lucasfilm got Journeyman. All right. Let's see. Tony says, I don't understand how the witches using their chanting to get the Wookiee to kill Saul and Tobin could all die. Was it like they used all their energy? Yeah, Tony, we were kind of talking about that too. I think before you joined. That's kind of why we were wondering and theorizing if maybe they didn't die, maybe they just kind of passed out. We had seen this before when a force user exerts a lot of energy, they get tired, they could pass out. Because we were wondering, did Indara's actions of releasing Kelna, like, is she responsible for the mass murder of all of these witches? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
because
don't.
we don't know what she did, assuming that she just pulled that out of him.
Yeah, my impression was like she released Kelnaka from what was happening, but in so doing, inadvertently killed all of them too. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Um, and I think that's the kind of stuff too. Is like it would be nice. It would have been nice to get a little bit more context into that, and maybe we'll never know. But it's like we only have one more episode, so.
Do we? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time where everyone says, "Oh man, it's going to be an hour and a half. It's going to be a surprise episode. There's going
No,
to be more, and there's going to be
yeah,
a season two." Well, oh, we don't know if there might be a season two. We
yeah. I
don't.
don't know. I don't know if it's officially confirmed. They have released the runtime leaked, and it's about the same as this episode was, so we can
Can
expect it to be about
can
the
you
same.
move us around? I just don't feel. I feel like Ryan. I feel like Journeyman should be up there. That's not. That's your call though. Okay,
There we
there
go.
we go. There we go.
He's back. He is back. Let's see. On program says it reminds me of Far Cry 5 of all things. Sometimes the best move is just to walk away.
I feel
Yeah.
like Journeyman knows this. He brought up. He pulled out the Black Ops reference with Mason, like
I've never
last week.
played Far Cry.
Okay. Eddie, you can tell me. Is this the one where if you stand in the room in the beginning at the very start and just don't do anything, you can beat the game without doing anything? Let us know, or let me know, because I know nothing about games. I just know my friend showed me this one time. Like the game begins, and if someone tells you, "Hey, stay in this room, I'll be right back," and then you leave the room, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get going with the game. But if you wait there like 20 minutes, he comes back and he says, "Hey, you did exactly what I said. Congratulations." And then the game ends.
That's hilarious.
All I know is I wish I would have learned that lesson a lot sooner in life.
Well, just stayed in the room.
Just listen. Just listen to the instructions. Tony says Saul is the poster boy for why Jedi should not have attachments. Yes.
And
It was
Anakin.
themed that way.
You would say it again, but it was okay.
Yeah. Ali is in the Ollie is in the chat. Says, "Sup, my nerd family. Good to have you here, Ollie." Awesome episode as usual. So, Ollie enjoyed the episode.
What was your favorite moment in the episode?
I think did I mention how I really liked how Torben like was just going crazy with that lightsaber? Like that was like visually like really cool to me. Like as a pet, he was just like and just very cool.
I agree. You know why? I think it was because we've seen yellow lightsabers a few times now, but we haven't. It's usually like there's a bunch of things happening on screen while the yellow lightsaber is on screen. But this was like the first time I can think of where we just had a solo yellow lightsaber moment, and I think that really helped. Like we just see it spinning in a circle. I'm like, I like yellow circles, and it was really cool.
It was visually very cool. The lightsaber, but also the choreography, like it was really cool. Plus the fact that it was like it wasn't blasters, it was like bows and arrows was really like he was just slicing them. Yeah. That was my favorite part. What was everyone else's favorite part? Let's go around the room. Journeyman.
I just wanted to see a Wookiee fight. So
Whoopie pie? Wait, what? A whoopie pie?
Wookiee fight.
Oh, I mean, I could use a whoopie pie, but I don't need the show for that.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
I have really bad hearing with these things.
No,
The Wookiee fighting was cool. Yeah.
The Wookiee part, I think my overall, because I like taking lessons away from a lot of Star Wars, and that's kind of what gives me like pleasure in watching the shows, is like learning and understanding and growing a little bit more. And so, kind of to the on program's point, is like sometimes you just got to walk away. And so I think that was kind of the big thing. It's like our intentions might be good, but sometimes the correct thing to do is just to walk away and let the situation play out how it's going to play out. Like sometimes you can't really do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Travis,
That's
what was your favorite part?
That's a really good point, because it kind of brings the question up of like if the Jedi hadn't butted in and done what they did, how would it have gone? Would it have gone better or worse? You feel like it might have gone better if they just minded their own business. It's debatable. It's like Luke Skywalker training on Dagobah. Should he have left when he did? Like logically, no, he shouldn't have. But then as a fan, you're like, but then we don't get the cool movies.
Well, and it's one of the things I also appreciate about the show too, and the way that they're portraying the Jedi, and it's something I want to do for this character. So if y'all have any ideas, let me know. But I really love it, and actually, I think why I like it too is because I'm reading the Fate of the Jedi novels right now, and it's all about similar to the Avengers. What Accords are they? Isn't the Sokovian Accords?
So Sokovia Accords.
Okay, Sokovia Accords. The idea that your heroes, and it's kind of like what the Martez sisters in the Clone Wars says too. Like the heroes are not always the good guys. Like yes, they might be doing noble things, but sometimes when power goes unchecked, they can go in and really ruin people's lives in trying to do good. Yes, the outcome might be good, but what occurred to get to that point? And that's kind of the premise of the Fate of at least the first book. Luke Skywalker literally gets arrested because the people of the galaxy are realizing like the Jedi, yes, have good intentions, but they're kind of ruining our lives at the same time. So just like the Avengers, like good intentions, but also at the expense of human lives. So I like that aspect of the Jedi. They're portraying them as good, but they're also showing of like how power that goes unchecked potentially can damage other people's lives. So But what did you like about the episode, Travis?
Actually, Tony kind of brought up one. It wasn't my favorite moment, but it's the one I was thinking about. He brought up the part where Soul. I don't know what it is, but when Soul is climbing the side of the castle, I don't know what it was, but the music was like really epic
Mm-hmm.
and cool. And then like it cuts to him like above the clouds, and he's on the rocks, and you're like, oh wow, he really climbed. Like wow. I
Yeah.
don't know. There was something cool about that evoked that classic adventure feel in the show. Like it's because sometimes it does feel like characters are on a green screen or just in a like against the volume like this like, but that really felt like it felt vast and you felt the scope of what was going on. I think it was funny every time Mother Coral yelled at somebody, but that's that's not my favorite part. Uh, yep, I loved that. I loved seeing like in as much as I like Indara got really annoying. I really liked like seeing her at odds and like going back to what we were talking about before, like the decisions people make under pressure. We saw like the worst of all of them coming out in those moments, and it was just fascinating to see these four people kind of be turned against each other. It felt a little bit like the movie The Hangover, except it's not a hangover. It's just like four Jedi losing control of the situation. Except one of them didn't get drunk and lost on a roof, but as far as we know.
One just got possessed by a witch and turned on all
it
his
is a
friends.
lot like
Yeah.
a hangover, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked how much it dealt with the humanity of these situations. And I really did like the ending with Soul, even though with him accidentally like it was a callback, kind of like there was a reference to Ghostbusters. I believe it seemed like a reference to Ghostbusters. The ending of this episode felt very much like the end of the movie The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin, where like the mother has two kids. She has the one that her kid and then her adoptive kid, and she has them both over a cliff, and she has to decide which one she's going to save. So she chooses to save her son, and then she lets spoilers. Sorry guys, if you haven't seen The Good Son, but Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone gets dropped off a cliff. But yeah, it did reminded me of. It reminded me like it seemed like a callback to that. I'm like, hey, The Good Son, but like, really seeing the humanity of these moments and some of the more thematic details of the series coming full circle, like Soul with the moth and cutting it in half, and then seeing how brashly he acts and how biasly he views situations. I really liked all of that.
I think there's another lesson though that I liked. It's like sometimes you have like there has to be a choice made. It's kind of like the no good option choice of like the thought process of like the train going down the track and you have a lever to switch. Like there's no good options there, so you have to choose kind of the greater good at that point. It's like that's kind of what Soul was kind of choosing, but he chose his emotional attachment over the other one. But he's trying to do the right thing. There's no really great options there.
I just have to say, and then there's a comment that Ali put in the chat that I want to get to, but I just wish that Soul would narrate all of his actions just because I love his accent and his voice so much.
Yes.
So it's like when he climbs that mountain, I'm like, I wish he'd be like, I'm going to climb this mountain. Like I just wish he could narrate all of his actions because his accent is just so great. Like
I could fall asleep to his voice. Every time he says OSHA, I get like a tingle in my body, but like in a good way. I'm just like
sounds so very calming.
Yeah. He's like, where is OSHA? Every time I'm like, ooh, that was like a fuzzy blanket every time.
Well, I don't know if we've talked about this on stream or we talked about this with you, Travis, on the stream, but I think is it Jing Chong Lee? Is that his name? I can't remember exactly.
I don't know his name.
But anyway, he was in Squid Game, but he learned English to play this role. Which I think is so cool. The fact that he learned English just to play a role in Star Wars is really, really cool to me. But there's this from Ali here. I thought this was really cool. Maybe we could see something like this play out. Not this exactly, but it says, I think they were about to absorb the twins at the ritual. May phased out when the mom did, if you noticed. What
Oh,
if what if we see the twin? Like, there's a big emphasis on always one born as two. What if we see something when they go back to Brendock? Maybe the eclipse obviously was, we've talked about there's something there. What if we see the eclipse occur again on Brendock? What if as part of that ritual they were going to like phase instead of becoming two? Because there's a little bit of emphasis in conversation about them being twins, but they're not really twins. They're one, but they're born as two. What if they're gonna like phase together and become the, which would kind of go along the lines of what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks of, they're the same person. Like we talked about on, what was it, Saturday, where Osha was like waking up abruptly and like, how is that a coincidence? And like maybe we see them like, maybe they really are like the same. It's kind of hard to put in words because it's like it's not nothing we've ever seen, but like we could definitely see something where they become like the same person or something like that. Like they phase into one another. I don't know. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? Is there any
Yeah.
merit to that?
Yeah.
Oh, real quick. On program reminded me. I think part of the why Soul's voice is so calming. You know what it reminds me of in episode 3, the birth robot thingy, the ice cream scooper droid that goes
Mhm.
"Ooba, ooba" when she's delivering Luke and
Yeah.
Leia. That's what
Mhm.
he reminds me of. Every time he says Osha, I just think of the little ice cream scoopers that robot had.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, you
it's
might be onto something. What if and this kind of goes back to my theory that isn't going to happen, where they go back and they find out the planet's dying since they left, and maybe that ritual
yeah.
was something. What if like maybe they have to absorb with the planet or something like that, so they can be the life force for the planet, something like that, where they both have to die.
Yeah.
That could be a route. Once again, if I think of it, it won't happen. But
No, it would be like like maybe the planet had a part in their creation and they are returned back to the planet in order to sustain it for some reason.
she wanted him for
Um,
Squid Game.
yeah,
And Tony encapsulated my thoughts perfectly. Him climbing the cliff reminded me of Lord of the Rings. So
Mhm.
that's part of it too. I think that's why it felt so. A lot of Lord. Whenever we go to this planet, it feels like Lord of the Rings sometimes.
Yeah.
I also love Tony's comment. He said Mando would just use his jetpack, get to the top, and send the elevator down.
That would be a very Mando thing to do.
That would be cool if we saw them like use this planet later in the timeline.
This is interesting. That's why the Sith were at the ritual to learn, not teach.
Yes. Oh, you just brought up something. Yes. Kymir seems to know their power a little bit.
Yes.
Because remember, he in
Yord.
episode, yeah, 4, Yod. It sounds like a New York accent every time I hear it.
Yod.
Yod. hey, I'm walking here, but it
Mhm.
sounds like when he was describing Kymir getting into his head and staying there, Osha says, like, yeah, my mother was like that. She had the
Mhm.
ability to do that. And it gave me, my thought was, oh, he must have learned their magic, or he learned every form of the Force he could, and that was one of them. And
Yeah.
that was a thought that I had a long time ago, but now it's coming back. This idea that he plays, because like clearly he must play some role in what's going on here. So
Yeah.
it would make sense if he was there at one point, because I do think he may be. One of you brought up the point of how did May get off the planet, and I think maybe Kymir had something to do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's if you go, a lot of people have pointed out if you go and watch episode 3, when they're doing the ceremony, there's like a hooded figure in the back, um, behind. I believe it's the mothers who are on like the where that uh the hole is.
Like
Not
cliff
like,
or whatever.
yeah, and the cliff, not like where all the people who are doing the power of one, not all those people, but if you go look, there's like he, and this person is not facing them. They're kind of like turned the other direction. It's very mysterious, and it's definitely like will catch your eye if you see it. So some people are wondering like, where was that the Sith? The Sith were there. And I really like the idea uh, of the Sith
I didn't
being there
notice
to
that.
learn. Yeah, I wonder. I can't bring up a picture, but um, I think Star Wars Meg actually has it in one of her thumbnails. Let me see if I remember this right. I think that would be. I think that would be cool for them to loop the Sith in, because I think Leslie Headland has said that this show is about the Sith, and I would say so far, well, yes, we've had some. I mean, we're not even sure if Chimere is a Sith, so I don't know.
I just had another thought.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, because Journeyman, I think you brought it up, the idea that they were on this planet and they didn't detect the castle with the witches in it this whole time. We see the witches wearing like a gold-ish metal. Is it possible that's cortosis as well? And that they are fortified with cortosis so the Jedi can't find them?
It's possible.
It's possible.
Because they really seem not to like them.
Well, speaking of cortosis, not to derail completely, but the I really like Star Wars Meg's videos. I watch her videos every day. I think it was the one from yesterday. She had a video where she was saying that the Nemodians at the beginning of this episode, or not this episode, but this season, they were carrying a cargo that they don't say what the cargo is, and it's very secretive. And there's a theory going around that maybe the cargo that they were carrying is cortosis, which would be really interesting.
But my
And
lord, is that legal?
no, it's not actually. And one of the things that I think would be cool, she was theorizing, is Hugo Damask, who is the name of Darth Plagueis. He has a company, runs a company called Damask Holdings. And she was like, what if something, this is just a theory, one of those Travis things of like, it's probably not going to happen. But what if the cargo that we see is the property of Damask Holdings and it's actually cortosis being transferred to a planet? And that would be a way to bring in Darth Plagueis.
If I remember correctly, Plagueis technically is alive during Phantom Menace, is he not?
Yes.
In Attack of the Clones, when at the very end, when Dooku meets up with Palpatine, he like goes to Coruscant, and they go to that weird district where there's just like it looks like you know what I'm talking about, where it's like red and there's like factory smoke everywhere. Is it possible that's where it is?
Could
what
be,
does the
yeah.
company do?
I don't know.
Is something I should know.
Yeah, no, I think it's all discussed in the Plagueis novel, which I haven't ever gotten around to reading. But Darth Plagueis' name is Hugo Damask, just like Sheev Palpatine or Anakin Skywalker. His name is Hugo.
News to me.
And he's part of the species of the Mun. On program, I know on program's a big lore guy. And so maybe he can help us out here. But anyway, from what I know is he owned a company, I believe it was his father's company at one point too. Darth Plagueis' father. Is it Hugo or Hugo? I don't know. Anyway,
Hugo,
but
it sounds like a Harry Potter character, Hugo Damask.
I thought it was Hugo, Hugo, but maybe it's Hugo. Anyway, has a company called Damask Holdings, and that was that was what he did. Just like Tenebris was an engineer who worked on ships and things like that. Darth Plagueis was like a business owner, I believe.
Right, because he's immune. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Nemodians are shipping some type of cargo at the beginning of this, and I think that in her video, she's basically talking about how that was, perhaps intentional a little bit, of how that's going to circle back around and be something big at the end. I found that video though. I'm going to post it in the Discord so you can see.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? because we've talked before about how like Ian McDermott has said in interviews that Palpatine is supposed to be well over 100 years old, according to Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to be in this show, but it would kind of help tie the shows together with the movies if we find out that the reason why Palpatine is manipulating the Trade Federation is because the Trade Federation were working with Plagueis, so he already had a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So he's just like, well, now that Plagueis is gone, I'm going to take advantage of these guys. That could add up. That would be kind of a neat tie-in, I think.
So to answer your question, Palpatine killed Plagueis in 32 BBY.
So that would be during the Phantom Menace, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So the Phantom Menace takes place right before 30 BBY, according to Reddit and other pictures.
Oh, so he was alive 2 years after the Phantom Menace?
Mm-hmm.
Or my math is terrible.
Yeah, he was. I think he was alive. I think he dies before Attack of the Clones,
but
is
I
alive
never
during the
thought
Phantom
of it
Menace.
that way because I thought Plagueis was like
ancient.
Well, I thought it was before Phantom Menace is when he died, and then we get Palpatine coming in and kind of starting his reign on everything. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, that's why it's interesting. Is Darth Maul is kind of like the acolyte because Darth Maul is the apprentice to the apprentice.
Yes.
Darth Plagueis, who is the apprentice to the master. I think in the Plagueis novel, it talks about how Plagueis was there when Anakin. I think when Anakin goes to meet Padme, and she goes in and he goes in. He's like, "I may never see you again." I think Plagueis was like there or something.
Yeah, I read Plagueis when I was like 12, so a lot of it didn't stick. And I'll be honest, when I first read it, I thought it was really boring, so I kind of just like put it down.
Yeah.
But there are several scenes from the Phantom Menace that you see from their perspective. I just didn't know. I knew he was alive during Phantom Menace. I didn't know he's survived.
It's around 32 to 30 BBY is what I'm kind of getting.
BBY is Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
So it would be 32 years before that. So you subtract from episode 4 to episode 1, it's 19 years between 3 and 4. You add 3 years for the Clone Wars, so 22. And then you add 10 years between Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, 32. So that adds up.
Palpatine
so he died around the time of Phantom Menace.
That's
probably right after. Well,
Yeah.
it would make sense because now his plan's in motion at the end of that movie. So he's kind of like, all right, I don't need you anymore. So, I don't know.
This kind of changes my perspective on that movie now. Because I never knew that. I thought he was like an ancient thing before Phantom Menace.
No, yeah, he's alive and well. But yeah, I think there could be an interesting connection. There's still that actor. We talked about it. I think it was you and I, Journeyman, talked about it a few weeks ago. I can't remember his name now. There's
one who could be,
Plagueis
Mayor Osha's dad.
Oh, is that a theory that's going out around?
I think I did hear someone say that.
That could be interesting.
Well, I always thought maybe they took the DNA from a male at some point. They just didn't believe in they were a woman-led cult. So they didn't believe in involving women in life. And they didn't believe in involving men in their lives at all.
I think it's heavily implied that they're born of the Force, don't you think?
Yeah, it's more likely that's the case.
Yeah. But I don't know who this guy. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's supposed to be playing a very important character. Where was that comment? Okay, here. Ollie says there's 2 hooded figures at the pre-ritual to the right observing, and during the ascension, there's one to the top right of the screen watching and not participating. Yeah.
There were guards that we see throughout the episode that are just kind of standing there. Like, remember when they show up inside the coven? There's those witches with the staff, with the bows and arrows, who are just standing there or letting them walk past them. Yeah. It could have been some of those.
They don't have weapons.
It is something I want to see again.
Go if you have access to the Discord. I just put it in the Discord. Her thumbnail. They don't look like they have weapons. It's very just eerie, and they're just kind of standing there.
I'm looking on Reddit, so on.
Yeah, please enlighten us.
View spoiler.
Let's see. Chimera is the original Ren. They're trying to throw us a softball with the Kylo Ren music. Well, but Ollie, one thing that's interesting is they don't play the Kylo Ren music for Chimera. They play it for Osha.
One
So I
thing
don't
that
know.
I have learned with this show is I think at first everyone was looking at everything as misdirection, me included.
Yeah.
Like like they're really laying it on thick. Like this guy is the bad guy, and you're just like, no, that can't be him. And then you reveal, well, sometimes they're just telling you how it is.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hide
Where did you
anything.
put it in the Discord, by the way?
The general tab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good night, Eddie.
Yeah. Have a good night, Eddie. Just saw that. May the force be with you as well. Let's see. Let me catch up on a few things here.
So the picture I found is like, so when they're looking over that ledge or whatever, and we're looking kind of back at the whole group of the mothers. You have like two hooded figures, both like near the hole or near the crater or whatever, and they're both hooded and they don't have anything. They're not turned to the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there could be something there. Because they are just kind of ominous and a little out of place almost. And so I think that there could be something there. We'll probably find out next week though. We're going on 2 hours, so I think we're gonna wrap it up there, guys. But anything else you want to add before we take off here? No. Okay.
No, nothing for me.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I
I
think
moved to
we
the
should
stream.
move to adjourn. Love it. I think we should be back on Thursday to go over any news that drops. Just a small tease, I suppose. Apparently, Lucasfilm is hiring additional staff for a new animated series that they're working on. We don't know what this series is going to be. I hope it's going to be a Luke Jedi Temple. I would want that so bad. Just like how the Clone Wars helped shed light on Anakin's character. I hope that we can see like a animated series that sheds light on the reason why Luke came to the decision that he did. But we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, we might talk about that. We'll talk about any other news, or we may just talk about the Acolyte again. Tony says, I motion to adjourn and get drunk. Well, no comment, Tony. No comment.
Not me.
Travis is like, it's no for me. All right. Stay safe, Ollie. I saw that you're in the middle of the hurricane right now. Hope you're safe. Glad that you are safe. You're at least on the stream, so that's a good sign. Praying for you and your family. And hope you can come back soon. All right. We're gonna get on here. May the force be with you always.